Welcome, everybody. It's so good to have you here. I'm so glad you've joined us for ChI Talks. I'm Reverend Carrie Kopnick, and I serve the Chaplaincy Institute as our community minister. ChI Talks is a monthly event that explores the facets of spirituality through an interfaith lens with the ChI community. We invite you to join us every month on the third Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific. We're recording our session today, so if you don't wish to be on camera, please turn off your video and your image won't appear in the recording. We'll have time at the end for questions about today's topic or about the Chaplaincy Institute. Thank you so much to Chaplaincy student and work study rock star, Robin Slaw, for being our tech jockey today, our Zoom jockey. If you got any questions, you can chat her privately or just in the regular chat. The Chaplaincy Institute provides education for those who are seeking to serve in hospitals, hospice, disasters, prisons, corporations, military, educational opportunities, and activists, as well as spiritual companions, our spiritual directors. She is the oldest and most respected interfaith seminary in the United States. Our ordination or faith group endorsement is recognized by the Association of Professional Chaplains, the Veterans Administration, and the military. This endorsement qualifies for the Board of Chaplaincy Certification, Incorporated, an affiliate of APC, and the most recognized professional certification in the growing field of chaplaincy. Clergy from ChI have served in many places and in many ways, including the Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, San Quentin, as well as one of our retired clergy told me, in line at the grocery store. Whether you're called to spiritual leadership or to explore what interfaith is in our experiential program, we prepare to serve people in our increasingly diverse society. I hope to see you in our classrooms or in our gatherings soon. I'd like to take a moment to welcome Reverend Elizabeth Becker. Thanks so much for being with us here today. Let me share a little about Reverend Liz with the gathered group. Reverend Elizabeth Meyer Becker is a community chaplain offering ritual, celebration, grief recovery, and spiritual companionship. In Spiritus, Elizabeth's interspiritual ministry supports leaders with contemplative practices and focuses on integrating threshold experiences. Elizabeth invites you to join her in person or virtually on the trails and canyons of the hills and heart. Walk into the restful land with the pear trees, streams, and redwoods. And we'll share at the end the contact information for Elizabeth and for her interspiritual ministry called Spiritus, which she calls a soulful sanctuary within us for recovery, creativity, and a fully lived life. Let's take a moment to center ourselves and light a candle, and to remind ourselves that the divine is with us. Thank you so much, friends. All right, Elizabeth, all yours.
Hi, everybody. We're going to be intimate today. This is great. So I'm Elizabeth, and I'm excited to be here today, mostly to be with you, and also out of such gratitude to have had the opportunity to really reflect on this really important part of my life and my practice as a chaplain, and as a business person, because I really saw in preparation today that there was an opportunity for me to marry my old life as a marketer and a communicator with the work that I'm now doing. So thank you very much, Carrie. As she said, I'm a ChI alum and I was ordained in 2021, and I'm currently practicing as a grief recovery guide using many modalities, some from my past, as I mentioned, but also spiritual direction. And I'm very much oriented towards post-traumatic growth, which is a buzzword these days, but kind of like, what are we going to do with this pain that we've had, and how are we going to work through it? So, but the most important thing today is that you know that I'm a caregiver. I know that's a role that some of us also share. I took on this role informally in 2013 and very formally in 2019. And it has changed everything in my life. I am the caregiver, and my care partner is my father, John Becker, who's a World War II vet and who's been retired from his sales career for 39 years. That's right, 39 years. He's pretty well, all things considered. You'll hear more about that. And he's going to be 100 years old in November. We have no reason to believe that he won't hit that. And there are so many stories that are going on around this little partnership. Some of it's going to be showing up on a thing that we're doing called John Becker TV. It's a meaning-based media project, legacy-based. And we're engaging on social media, and also we're making about a film about our lives, family caregiving, and also how to increase access to veterans benefits, which can change the world, not only for the veteran, but also for the family caregiver. For now, I'm going to ask you to just put in the chat, if you wouldn't mind, where you're calling in from and whether you see yourself as a carer, meaning somebody who's providing caregiving, somebody who is receiving care, so a care partner, or if you see yourself as both, which I do. And you'll hear that my story actually is that. So I'm going to tell a little bit of a story about what happened this year to set the context. One of the things that we talked about doing today was sharing the importance of story, tools, practices, and spirit. Oh, hi, Francis. Great to see you. Oh, hi, Alex from Boston, Anne from Point Richmond, Aloni in Newark Land. Thank you for remembering that. And just if you guys wouldn't mind just touching your toes. I'm also from Philadelphia, so everybody's you guys. I really do a good job of not saying that all the time, but it is a Philadelphia thing. Touch the ground with your feet and remember the traditional longtime tenders of this land that you're on. You're welcome to bring their names into the room in the chat. Great. Yes, Anne, I'm always inspired by you in spirit and presence. Before we go into my story, I'm going to invite you into one of the things I promised when we put this talk together, which are some essential practices. So first, I'd invite you to close or soften your eyes and imagine that you are bringing in your great spirit, your element of the divine, your higher self, your sense of community, whatever it is that is the creative force in your life, even if there is no one, or if there's something that's changing about it, whatever that energy is, I invite you to bring that in. And at the same time, while you have your eyes closed, imagine that you feel your own, but now you're starting to feel the corpus, the body of all of this energy coming in. Okay, this is the essential practice of welcoming spirit. Totally portable. Did you see how quick that was? The next one is one that comes from physiology, specifically around the vagus nerve, one of our cranial nerves and the longest nerve in the body that regulates our parasympathetic nervous system, which is really great in times of trauma. So I've got stories about that we might not get to, about how this particular practice saved my hide several times. So this is contrary to most breath practices, which focus on the inbound breath. This practice focuses on the outbound breath. And you may have heard that if you double the exhale of your breath, and if you do this at least 3 times, you will start to signal to your body that there's something more in charge than the trauma that's presenting itself. So I'm going to invite you to take a breath in at your own pace to the count of 2 or 3 or 4. Sometimes 2 or 3 when we just start, 4 eventually. And then exhale through the mouth to the count of 4 or 6 or 8. Enjoy the little pause and then come inbound through your nose is the instruction. 2, 3, or 4. Little pause at the top, and now exhale through the mouth. You can make a little noise to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, wherever you can get to. And we're going to do that one more time for a count of 3. Inbound, outbound. This is really great. And you see, again, totally portable, super, super quick. If you do 3 sets of 3, you can actually change the world. Most people forget what it was that bugged them up the first time by the end of the second set, but just go for 3 if you ever really are in deep doo-doo. I'm glad we're recording that. The reason why we talk about this particular practice is that I'm going to get into story now. And because there's no difference between you and me, my story is likely to activate some part of your story. And if you find that my story starts to challenge you, I invite you to do one of 2 things, one of which is to return to this steadying breath. You're going to be on mute anyway, right? You blow all day long if you want to, when you hear about how the blank went down in my life. And then Carrie, I think you have another offer too.
Yeah, if you would like a little chaplain care, I would be happy to hop in a breakout room. So just let me know.
Great. So we're going to do a little storytelling now. I'm going to invite you at some point to do your own storytelling. There'll be some reflection. If technology holds and the earth holds, we will jump into a breakout room. And if that all works, we'll come back, right? And then we're going to have some other things around tools and practices that I used. I'm going to offer right now that this is just my story and some things that have come from my life and just this part of my life. So I'm not talking about all of the things that I've learned in other ways, but I just want to talk about this one as a case study. So this past January, my father and I, we lived together in Oakland, started 2 months of very difficult things, VDTs, very difficult things, okay? Maybe you too have some VDTs in your life. And maybe they come kind of like a train, like this one did. In my story, I'm the caregiver and my father is the care partner, but maybe he cares for me too, as you might see. And here's our challenge, and you're going to hear about our caregiving community. So on January 12th, Dad was evaluated for military service-connected hearing loss as the basis of applying for benefits from the Veterans Administration. Yeah, that's right, 76 years late. 76 years late. My father never saw himself as disabled. I mean, we knew. And this particular evaluation made him acutely aware that he was disabled. So can you imagine being 99 years old and finding out that you've had a lifetime disability and you've never known about it? He literally cried in the car. And he started on the path of trying to understand what had happened to him in the war versus what he had inherited, because his mom also had hearing loss. That's the first thing. A lot of this is chronicled in one of the tools that we're going to talk about, which is Facebook and Instagram. And this was one part of the story. Another part of the story was that my father's PSA, or prostate stimulating antigen, a marker for prostate cancer, started running very high, like it took off across the field. And we knew that this meant that his prostate cancer, which had been for about 25 years pretty well managed, was growing and spreading. The bone scan showed evidence of cancer in his bone. And yes, that's what that means, stage 4. So now my father is disabled and has stage 4 cancer. 3 weeks before going on respite leave, the caregiver I had arranged and counted on for covering Dad while I was in Hawaii, decided that she was not up to the task. So I had to work on finding a relative. The next week, we discovered another vein occlusion in my father's good eye, the remaining eye, the same kind of thing that had taken away his eyesight 2 years ago. Because when Dad moved in with me in 2019, he had, as we thought, all of his eyesight. It turns out he didn't, but it was slowly going, and it hadn't become obvious to him yet that he was going to go blind in one eye. And for anybody who's living with somebody who only has monocular vision, all kinds of social interactions and ability to move freely and to learn how to move freely at 99 in a monocular world has been quite a challenge. 4 days after this, his car, the car that we used, the only car that I had, was stolen, and along with it, my purse, my wallet, my phone, my computer, and a bunch of stuff for a client. So I got to meet the Oakland PD. That was pretty fun. We went to Hawaii. I mean, how we got to Hawaii is a whole nother story, but how we got to Hawaii on my passport and luck and some debit cards that came in the mail the night before. And the day after we got home, I fell down the steps and I broke my ankle pretty badly. I had to have surgery 10 days later on February 27th. I started then 6 weeks on the couch with my father near me. And I realized that I couldn't do it all. So I'm going to show you some pictures from that time. Dad and me. This is an image from my website. It's actually my partner, Paul, holding my hand, or me holding his hand, or whoever's hand is holding whose. It doesn't really matter. I think it kind of gets to the mood. This is the day of my father's bone scan. This is at the VA in Martinez, California. My father's a big Roman Catholic. So we say grace the old-fashioned way. And this is my cousin who flew out from Norfolk, Virginia to make sure that we could get off to Hawaii. I'm showing you bags of groceries because that's going to be important later on. But you get the sense. Dad's all together. He's got all of his faculties, etc. So one thing I had learned from helping to support other communities indirectly as a chaplain, and also directly from my own healing with breast cancer, was that I needed a community at this point. I'm grounded. I mean, Dad needs eye drops every day. I had also run a care community for a transplant patient in 2017, and for another friend who was at the time living with ALS from 2017 to 2019. So this was all going on while I was at school. Many of you guys remember. So I knew I needed a community. So right now I'm going to invite you guys to take just 2 minutes to jot anywhere. In my practice, we don't journal. We jot, because when people are dealing with hard things, journaling is just too much. So I'm going to invite you to jot the following things. And I'm going to put these in the chat. So hold on a second. The first one is in your story. Now you think about your story. You think about your story. I have my story. You think about your story. Who is the carer and who is the care partner? And what's the primary reason for the relationship? In my story with Dad, it's that he was getting older. But there's a thing about my divorce that's in here too. We're not going to talk about that today. But this is where it's kind of bilateral, right? It's mutual, right? It goes back and forth. And describe the source of the primary care community person. Is it yourself, or is there somebody else who's providing? Are you just a part of the care community, or are you actually a witness to somebody who's a care coordinator? And what is the challenge now? What's the challenge for you? What's the challenge for your care partner, the person who's receiving care? And are there challenges for other people? Like maybe they're not here, or maybe they don't have any money, or, all of it. And you can put this in the chat. Thank you, Anne. I see that you are. God bless you. I mean that. God is part of my interfaith tradition. So whatever that comes to you as. Yeah, the challenge is isolation. Caregiving is one of the most isolating. And so I'm so happy you're here. I was hoping you'd be here because 5 years ago, we were at the Parliament. I can't go to the Parliament this year. Maybe you can't either. Yeah, maybe for the same reasons. All right. So I'm going to do this wild thing where I'm going to put you guys into breakout rooms. And this is going to be really great. Let's go. Okay, I'm going to open the rooms. Here's what you do. You share, this is very simple. You share who you are, where you're calling from, what role you're playing. So you're the carer, you're the care receiver, or you're both, and what your challenge is now. What your challenge is now. And then we're going to whisk you back here really quickly. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. I would like to invite everybody, if you had any ahas or anything that you'd like to share, you can put it in the chat. And then if there is anybody who feels like they want to be the voice of our experience to share in a minute or two, what you might have learned either through the reflection or through the breakout, we have room for a voice to represent you. Is there anybody? I also would like to welcome Laura. Welcome. That's great. Okay, well, what we're going to do now is just get an orientation to where we are. So when looking at activating care communities, one of the most important things that you can do is to really be clear about what the story is, because it's the story that's going to help you invite people into community, into a caregiving community. And we're going to talk now about some of the tools that I use to do that. But all along are these practices, right? So the practices of calling in spirit, the practice of regulating our breath, the practice of sharing with each other is one that we just did, sharing story with each other, working kind of in a group environment and working in one-on-one environment or one-on-two. So, we just have to be really fluid about that. So I'm going to take you into 3 online tools that we used this year that help us set ourselves up for success relative to a care community. And the first one is one that you might not really expect, or maybe you think, oh, of course. But whatever the case is, social media played a big role for us. I started letting people know on Instagram with an automatic post to my Facebook that something really big had happened. And it was almost like I just was like shocked, and I needed first off to write. So that was very useful. But from a marketing and communications perspective, I needed to create some cover for myself, like to get some allowance from the world, so that when I didn't show up or didn't respond, that people knew what was going on. And it turned out to be like a 7-part series, right? Part 1. And I basically, the first one basically says, when the shit goes down, pardon my language, you don't necessarily start with the first thing. You just start like wherever you are and call that part 1. And then you can go forward, you can go back, and this is kind of how it feels when you're in trauma, right? I'd like to also mention that caregiving is a form of trauma. It is a loss, an ongoing loss. It also has really wonderful times. I mean, it's just all of it. And it's very useful to treat caregiving like a continuing trauma so that you can work through the resilience that can also happen because of that. So sometimes I will make that point. So I started with Facebook and Instagram, And if you go back, first off, friend me if you want to, connect with me however you want. You can go back in and look at these very public communications, and you can see that they're half journal and half just getting their group ready. Then what happened is that two of my friends contacted me and they said, can we just do something to get like food coming to your house? And I went, oh, I remember. When I had breast cancer, we had something called Lots of Helping Hands, which is one of many. And I'm only going to talk about a couple today, but this is one that I'm not going to talk about. And I said, yes. Of course, my father was like, we don't need help. And I was like, I don't know who's going to be making you dinner, John Becker, but like, it's not me right now. I'm on the couch. I got, I'm wrapped up. So Betsy and Aaron, I asked them to figure out what worked. They chose give in kind. I'm gonna bring up a screen. I'm gonna share my screen so that you can see our give in kind. Maybe you'll see our give in kind. Let's see. Let's see, where is it? Maybe it's here. I don't know. Just a moment, please.
We're here for the tech blips. That's
yeah, it's here somewhere. So I'll get it up in a second. I'm gonna pause this. I'm gonna talk for a minute. So we brought up this Give in Kind website, which was partial, like small group, ongoing story situation, but that's not unlike a Caring Bridge or Meal Train or GoFundMe, some of the others. And it's also a scheduling platform, which these others have again. So what you're looking for to really automate a care community is something that has a place for story and a place for people to give care. One of the reasons why we liked Give in Kind was that it allowed people, if they wanted to send us cash, which quite frankly we needed at the time, and to also send us gift cards. So we got a lot of Uber and DoorDash gift cards, which were very, very useful. Very, very useful. And then, of course, because I grew up Roman Catholic, but maybe you can insert however you grew up, I knew that I was going to have massive amounts of guilt if I didn't write thank you notes. So I started using, putting together a Google sheet where I could have many different tabs. And so we could actually start understanding and seeing the abundance, because it's kind of abstract. All of this email-y kind of stuff is abstract. And this was great. And then, of course, I'm there trying to work through painkillers and post-surgery, and also try to, email. I used that week between the foot break and the surgery to get that 7-part series out. So another practice is to work the community when you have time to work it. Don't think you have to work it all the time. Just do a little bit here or there. Aaron and Betsy were really helpful in saying, well, who should we get this to? And I note now that there were 2 informal network leaders that helped me, one of which was from my client, which represented really a global women's group. And another one was from our church. I'm just telling you right now, spiritual care is one of the things that religious or spiritual bodies can do well. And sometimes they fail miserably. And sometimes we have wounding because of that. So you'll figure it out. You'll figure out whether that's a place of comfort and resource for you or not at all. One of the other practices that I wanted to talk about was figuring out the concept of the sacred ask. Like my cousin Linda, this happened when the caregiver went sideways 2 weeks before our Hawaii vacation and a week before the car was stolen. Like, I had to figure out what I needed. I needed 8 nights. I was willing to pay to have somebody come here. I was able to find 3 people to ask, and the first 2 didn't work out. And the third one actually worked out, and then I needed to pay for some additional caregiving around it. So I had to just keep going. I had to keep going. So here's a reflection for you. What is a sacred ask you could make now? You know it's sacred because it kind of gets you in the perineum. You're like, oh, it's a lot to ask. They're going to say no. All the chatter, right? So what's a sacred ask? And who would you ask it of? And if you really want to practice the breathing activity, what keeps you back from asking? Caregiving takes us into the heart of our vulnerability. It's not a really great place to go alone. Most people don't have the stomach to come with us. But my God does. The pear tree in the backyard knows how to come with me into the heart of darkness. And if you are so inclined, you can share in the chat. There are so many things that I could talk about, but I just wanted to focus on 3 spiritual practices in addition to what we've already talked about. So shifting gears here a little bit from the tools. Prayer and meditation was really important. You know, when you're sitting on your ass, which I was, pardon me, my language today. I got back into my 12-step work through, I'm part of one of the process programs, specifically around money, which was really good because money was tight and I had to give up one of my clients because of this. Another spiritual practice is gratitude. And for us, we express this by writing thank you notes. I wrote them. John Becker signed his name. And he would say to me, make sure that Robin is thanked for making the chocolate chip cookies. I was like, okay. And then here's one that really took some interesting finagling, was that we gave back 10% of everything that we got. People raised money to replace my computer, $3,000, $300 of it went out. People brought in meals for us. We valued that at $30 a meal, $10 a person. I kept track of every single thing. Mostly because it was also me keeping my feet on the floor, but we gave back. So I have a tab for the ladies called the Food Angels and their husbands, because there were a lot of husbands that came too. And no, we didn't get chicken enchiladas every time. So figure out a way of giving back, because this is actually like, I can hear in seminary, like who learned about man's search for meaning, right? In seminary, if not somewhere else, right? So man's search for meaning basically says we can withstand anything if we have a higher purpose around it. And I could not sometimes see the higher purpose, except when the miracles started happening, we just gave back. So when Anne called me from, not this Anne, but Anne who headed up the computer replacement fund, she called and she said, I have $800. How do you want it? And I was like, what do you mean? I can't take that money. Oh, yes, you can. I'm not giving it back. Humbling. I was like, okay, but we're giving some of it back. And then my father's veterans benefits arrived from out of the blue. And that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. So I would like to give thanks at this time for this part, and open the circle up for anybody who has comments or questions. We have about 10 minutes. Does anyone have any thoughts, comments, questions? Alex.
Yeah, I have a question about kind of about the day to day. You mentioned the help that you were getting, and it's food and it's computers and things like that. But I know that just the day to day of being a caregiver it takes a huge toll. So did you have additional help to give you time away from caregiving at all? Or do you have additional help?
Yeah. So one of the things that was super great was that my partner was here at the time. And he's a man who's never been married and never had children. Once one of 13 children specifically. I had no idea what he had in him. And his job every night basically was to take the food that people had brought and plate it, put it in the microwave and bring it out to us. And he would put the eye drops in my dad's eyes. We also have a benefit, which was very weird and changing, a whole nother story, from the Veterans Administration for what they call home health aid, different than aid in attendance. If anybody needs to talk about veterans benefits, I can be of some use it separately. We had some help with that. I also called a guy who used to be the waiter and said, Ricky, do you know anybody who can come and like help us with the yard? And he was like, I'll do it. So, I mean, I just started asking. And so one tactic is to say, hey, who do you know who might? And then people go, I'll do it. I had people picking up knee scooters for me, picking up things from Buy Nothing, taking stuff away to put on Buy Nothing. I mean, people just showed up, but part of it is that we use the give in kind, and I'm going to try to share this now. Share screen, get me give in kind. This is the PowerPoint desktop. So the give in kind, oh, here it is. You can see everything. Sorry. Whoa, chaos. Here we go. The give in kind. There was an actual place where you could register what you needed. Here was the calendar. So it's kind of gone fallow right now, but there was a place where we could add all kinds of requests. What kind of requests? Right. So it brings up these places. And I had to get used to people just not signing up. And then I had to call them. So this sacred ask thing never stopped, but you can see that there's lots of different things. And the custom one was great because it would be like, call my dad, send my dad a letter. So I've got this one gal who actually is sending a letter from Texas. Like she sends a letter almost every week still. I think she's fallen in love with my father. It's a different issue. Now we've got a different issue. Anyway, I hope that answers the question. So yeah, there were definitely people, but one of my best friends basically called me and said, I can send you money, I can't come. And it broke my heart. Until I realized that my power doesn't come horizontally from those people who show up or don't show up according to their needs. My power comes from the earth and the sky. And I made do. And you know what? Sometimes my father actually took more care of himself than I expected, which I know some of you do not have somebody in your care who can pick up. And he couldn't be relied to do that, but there were opportunities. I'm really close with my neighbors now. I was not close with our neighbors previously. Does anyone have another question or comment?
I do.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, I'm sorry I was late. I didn't know how to find you until the last minute. But anyway, the reason my question to you is, and this is relating to me kind of pretty much. I was a caregiver for seniors for about 25 plus years in this county I live in. And then, so it seems like what you're talking about is mostly about physical illnesses and recovering from surgeries and things like that, and traditional caregiving, so to speak. And the question I have is, what I think is that a need that's not really addressed, and I think it's kind of on a spiritual level too, is emotional assistance, companionship for people who have some kind of trauma on a mental health issue like PTSD or something to that effect, who sometimes, there's various different levels of care.
Yeah.
I'm not, I never got certified as a nursing assistant, but I did everything but the heavy nursing care.
Yeah.
But I think there's a real need for, especially in our society, there's a lot of loneliness. And also, so I think there's people who are more isolated than others. And depending on your level of income or finances or your abilities to get help, it's very limited if you're low income.
I would agree. Yeah.
So
My
basically,
father's, I'm happy to say my dad makes 2,500, at the time was making just slightly under $2,500 a month. And I was keeping myself right at about that level myself, just to stay beneath this. So we are, we're a Medi-Cal family. We have all kinds of resources that we had no idea about. My job is to make sure that my father's life happens. The church was really great. There were people who came over just to visit. I mean, they're like, sure, what can we do? Can we run to the hardware store, John Becker? Some people took dad out to the hardware store, which was great. And they would have a conversation. So my father actually got a lot of his, people come back and say, your dad's really concerned about you. And I'm like, yeah, well, he should be. So, I will also say that I increased my care too, Laura, and I looked into a caregiver support program through the VA and also a therapist. Turns out my therapist couldn't deal with it. I had too much chaos. She freaked out, and so she couldn't deal with it. Like, okay. So in any case,
I think that I'm pretty my psychology is pretty, I'm pretty complex.
yeah.
And so I think you're right. There's to some degree, I think, and I've done a lot of reading. I'm pretty well read in psychology and trauma and recovery and all that kind of stuff. And generally speaking, a lot of the therapists don't understand PTSD, especially developmental, with you're severely neglected or abused somehow. And they're now talking about in neuroscience that if you didn't get that mirroring and that attunement, and I think that's what's missing big time in therapy. They don't understand that. So I think just basic human connection is so important.
Well, this is where I'm really glad that you brought this up, and we're down to our last 7 minutes, and I have a little bit of an exercise, but here's the invitation is that for those people who are interested in being in touch, Carrie's going to put how to do that. But I think that this ongoing care situation is really important. If I've taken one class on how to be a good caregiver, if I hear one more thing about green leafy vegetables and making sure I get 7 hours of sleep, I think I'm going to throttle somebody. It's like, thank you. What I really need is a community of practice. And what I think we all really need is a community of practice. So I'm just going to say that, let's see if that can form. Because I think that we need it not only for ourselves and for our loved ones, but also because of our profession and what we've chosen to be and do in the world. Before we shift gears back to Carrie, I'd like to have everybody just take a minute of reflection. Another practice is integration. I'd like you to consider two things. The first one is what are you taking away from today? What are you grateful for? What's a takeaway for you? One thing, hopefully you got something, maybe just a break. And the second thing is, what kind of action might you want to take? It could even be prayer. It could even be just a nap. what are you committed to do in the next hour or day or week? Pick whatever horizon or period that you feel is appropriate, but just something that feels like moving out of the theory and into action. So, yes, I totally see what you're saying, Jess. My daughter's part of the queer community, and this is a major deal. I have some very good friends who are in this world, and it's hard to raise money. It's hard to raise visibility at times. I will say that some of the people who showed up for us in the biggest way were part of the LGBT community, both at our church and in our community. So anyway, right. If there's anything that you want to put in the chat, you can. I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to turn this back to Carrie.
I want to say thank you very much, Elizabeth, for this time. What a blessing you are to the world. Thank you, Anne and Fran and Alex and Laura and Jess, for sharing from your heart and letting us continue to hold you in loving care. I'll continue to hold you in loving care. And then I want to say too that for many of us, this is our spiritual community at the Chaplaincy Institute. So, and I'm your community minister. So if there's anything that I personally can do for you, reach out, put yourself on my schedule, email me, text me. I'm here for it. So that will come in the email that when you register, you give us your email. And so we will, I'll send this out to everybody with, here's the information I'm going to put in the chat for how to reach Elizabeth.
No, I just did it just because I knew you were talking, and yeah, sorry.
Okay.
You're welcome to do it again. I mean, double good.
But so an email will come with that information, and it'll come with my information. And then let's continue to work together of how to build these communities of care. How to have that sacred ask. I can feel that in my body. Not in the place you said, Elizabeth, but I can feel it in my body. So let's close our time together here. Let's just settle our bodies into our seats. A big breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then if it's available to you, just take a moment and put yourself back in the room. Look to your left. Look to your right. Look up. Look down. Take a moment and release your jaw. We hold so much stress in our jaws. And then I'm here in my body. I'm here in my body. I'm safe. I see the ways out of my room. I'm safe and whole. And I want you to know, friends, that you are whole and holy and good. I'll hold you in love. Send you on your way. Watch for the resources. So much love. And I'll stay on a minute if anybody has anything they want to say. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. You were wonderful. So deeply appreciated.
Thanks for asking.